Welcome to Coffee with Alain. It's Saturday. Saturday's the day I like to talk about reading. Encourage you to read more and share some of the things I've recently finished. This morning, we're going to talk a little bit about chicken soup for the soul of America and ultimate fitness, the quest for truth about exercise and health. An interesting thing about this book is it's sort of the same on both sides, a little bit different picture, but this is the title and so forth. Interesting cover design for Ultimate Fitness, the quest for truth about exercise and health by Gina Kolata. So we're going to talk about this one, and we're going to talk a little bit about chicken soup for the soul of America. Before we get started on those books, just reminding you, I do this, and I drink out of a book mug because, there's all a bunch of books that were inspiring to me as a kid. A lot of the Tarzan and Conan books that I just devoured when I was young. But reading can take you so many places. You can get so much enjoyment, get a lot of education, and we read for both reasons. I share things. You might see something, say, hey, I want to read that. Wonderful. It might just inspire you to get something else that you enjoy, that you want to learn. That's great too. Interesting text from my daughter this week. The 4th of July weekend, she moved into New York City. She's living there in Hell's Kitchen, part of Manhattan. Got a new job she started over in Brooklyn. And she's pretty busy, obviously. New place, new job, the New York. But she sends us little text messages, keeping us updated about her apartment. First day of work, it went well. She got tickets to see Aladdin last weekend and went and saw Aladdin. Got some cheap tickets. She was excited. She has a gym that she's going to there and fitness trainer. So excited about that and sent some stuff. But one of the texts that I really liked that she sent this last week, I got a library card. Yay. So we're doing something right. Out of all the busy things and the stuff she's doing, she went and got a library card there in New York. And libraries are free. They're magnificent. You can get books, you can get audiobooks, all sorts of other kind of resources there. And so I'm really glad that my daughter's taking advantage of New York's library, which, New York, that big giant library in New York is just, it's awesome. When I went to New York, that was a place I had to stop and see, and it is so cool. So I'm glad my daughter got a library card and hope she utilizes it. And it's there for everyone. Libraries are there for all of us and such a great resource. But let's talk about books. Ultimate Fitness, the quest for truth about exercise and health. This is a reporter reporting on fitness. So it's really not a how to become ultimately fit, but it's a reporter that was looking at different aspects of the fitness industry, talking about less is more, or is it, different fitness philosophies and how much is enough. And, looking at that maximum heart rate, the 220 minus your age is your maximum, and you want to train within the 80% zone. And where did that come from? And is it really legit? Different training lore and different things. She really gets into spinning because she did a lot of spinning. So there's some chapters on spinning. There's chapter on, is there actually a thing called the runner's high, and what is that all about? And then talking a little bit about bodybuilding and, the rise and such of bodybuilding and sculpting a person's body. Talks about the business of fitness and so forth. So it was an interesting look at different fitness trends and things that have gone throughout the years. Going back to, Ken Cooper with aerobics and Jim Fix with the running, all the way up into, the Weeders and Arnold with bodybuilding, the spinning craze and all different things. So it was an interesting read about the fitness industries. 25 years, coming up on the 25th anniversary of 9/11 with the attack on the Twin Towers. This book is all about that. Chicken Soup for the Soul of America, Stories to Heal the Heart of Our Nation. I wanted to read it one more time before I donate it, as I'm downsizing my library. So all of the stories in this book were about the attacks on the towers. And there were stories about firefighters and stories about, that actual day, stories about recovery, stories about families, stories about America coming together after that tragic day. You can't help but get a tear or two reading some of these accounts, especially for those of us that are old enough to actually remember that day. When I think about my daughter, grown up through high school, graduated college, now living and working in New York City, she wasn't born when that happened. So a lot of our younger generation, they weren't born when, and they're out in the workforce now, and they weren't even born when that happened. But for those of us that are older and remember that morning when that happened and what we were doing and exactly what, that day is just seared into our minds for life. These stories couldn't help but bring a tear or two, and a sense of hope at times, a sense of, wow, what people do. So very emotional read, especially if you remember that tragic day, which we're coming up on the 25th anniversary of. So I did enjoy reading those again. I've been reading these chicken soup books again before I'm donating them off and trading them off and downsizing the library. But this was a pretty powerful one about that tragic day and everything related to that. Those are the books I have. Besides books, you should be reading the blog post that I'm putting at enjoylifesafely.com. Just put a big one on yesterday about using defensive sprays as a defensive tool and why you should carry one. I recommend Reflex Protect, but in there I'm talking about pepper sprays and different things as well. A good quality defensive spray. I used to recommend different pepper sprays before Reflex Protect came around. And so I do recommend a defensive spray, and there's a good article about, different aspects of why and what you should do when you have a defensive spray. So that was the newest blog at enjoylifesafely.com. While you're there, get signed up for the newsletter. That'll be going out tomorrow. Probably have a short little excerpt on pepper spray and defensive sprays in the newsletter. Not as long as the blog post, but I'll probably take a little from that and make an article out of the blog post into that. I'll make some social media posts, cutting up pieces of that blog too. But check that out. Get on the newsletter list. Get a book. Get an audiobook. Get a Kindle. Doesn't matter if it's paper, ebook, audiobook. Read for enjoyment. Read for education. Read for a little inspiration and a tear or two once in a while. Before I leave, I do want to say hello to Dixon. Dixon put some emojis, and that one I understand because he has the Statue of Liberty, the lion, and a book, representing that New York library with the lions out front on the steps. Magnificent building and so really cool. And then he had the United States and with the coffee. So, yeah. And then Jay is here saying good morning from Jay and Vicky and Sasha. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you, Dixon, for joining. Thank everybody watching replays, listening to the podcast, wherever you're at, whatever you're doing. I appreciate you spending some of your time with me on Coffee with Alain, with the newsletter, with the blog posts, with the courses I put out, with the live trainings I do. I appreciate interacting and helping whenever I'm doing it, however I'm doing it, and I can't do it without all of you. So thank you. Make it a spectacular, sensational Saturday. I'll be back tomorrow to talk a little bit about the new movie, The Odyssey. Went and saw that with my wife yesterday, and we both really enjoyed it, and we'll be talking about it tomorrow.